And hello once again, my name is Lupus, and today we're going to be talking about dramatic, character, actor, and spectator. This is the third of these videos about drama that I've done recently. So, what are these things? I know, such an exciting thing. But before we get into that, if you appreciate these videos and you like the kind of things that I do, and you want to support them, you can check out my Patreon or check out my books. Both will be very appreciated. But we're going to get into the actual topic now. So, dramatic, character, actor, and spectator. These three groups are related to one another, and they have a relationship with one another that is important to note. Now, let's first just say dramatic character. It was known as dramatic personae. Sometimes people call them figures, personages, types, etc. Basically, these are all different possible terms to relate to the same general concept, right? It's a person on stage who is being represented by someone else, right? They're fictional. Now, the thing is, we can get into a lot of possible disputes and arguments about which of these terms should be used and when, right? But we are going to kind of sidestep a lot of that because that goes into, if you want to say personages rather than types, or you want to say characters instead of figures, basically you get into a lot of terminological sort of difficulties, and there's a lot of arguments that can be had there, and so we're not going to do those. We're just going to look at it from a very, very basic perspective, so you can kind of see this as more of an introductory type understanding of dramatic, character, actor, and spectator. So, very, very simple terms. What is the difference between a character, an actor, and a spectator? So basically, a character is fictional. An actor is someone who connects the fictional and the real, whereas a spectator is the real person that is spectating on the representation of fiction. So, the actor is the person on stage who is pretending to be a character because they connect the fictional of the character with the real of the spectator. Okay. We know what these things are, though, right? A character and an actor are both on stage. Well, the actor is on the stage, the character is where the stage is represented, and the spectator is in the audience watching. Okay, now there is what is called the contract theatral between these three groups. It's this called a triadic collusion of three figures, right? So the actor, the character, and the spectator basically have an agreement with one another. They have a contract with one another that they essentially all agree to be part of this. You don't sign a contract. It's not like a physical contract. It's more like an unwritten agreement, right? So basically there's this sort of collaboration between these three things. The actor pretends to be a character. The character is therefore there on stage. And the spectator pretends, while watching, that the actor is not a person on stage, but is rather the character, right? You are pretending. There is a sense of understanding that this is representative. You understand as a spectator that the person on stage is pretending to be someone else. So imagine if a person on stage says something very, very rude. You're not going to sit there and think, wow, that person on stage is so rude. You'll think that character is so rude, right? Think about when you watch it like horrible villains in movies. You don't think to yourself, unless you're very weird, you don't think to yourself that the actor is a bad person. You think to yourself that the person they are playing is a bad person, right? You think that the character is bad. So essentially, there's this kind of collaborative idea between the actor and the spectator, with the author, with the actor being very, very active. And now there can be a very, very collaborative mode in which they are very closely connected to one another. There can be times in which the actor and the spectator actually have a much closer relationship with each other. Think of plays in which the actors actually interact with the audience. Then the spectators basically become part of the performance. So they're playing a more active role. But most of the time, when you think of a play, the audience, the spectator, right, is much more passive. They're just watching, especially in more traditional theatre, right? There are cases in which this doesn't happen, such as whenever an actor breaks the fourth wall. So imagine a character is on. You see, this is what happens when you get mixed up with these terms. When an actor is on stage, they're sitting on stage, they're talking on stage, and then they turn to the audience and they speak to the audience directly. There is now a more active relationship between the actor and the spectator, right? They are now actually engaging with one another. This is less likely to be seen in other mediums. You're not really as likely to see this in a movie. Although there could be cases, say something like Deadpool, right? A character who breaks the fourth wall on purpose. They know they are in a movie, and so sometimes they will talk about the audience. Sometimes they will directly talk to us. No one else seems to realize they're in a movie, but that character does. That is something that can be done to create a more active role for the spectator, because you're not actually necessarily suspending your disbelief. You are realizing and understanding that this is fiction and it's all made up, because there is kind of this winking nod to you, being like, you see, I'm addressing you directly because we acknowledge that you are here. But a lot of the time, most of the time, it's more passive. However, something that's important to take note is that metatextuality is actually quite important to a lot of drama. Now, obviously, basically, the drama is fundamentally metatextual or metadramatic because the thing that's on stage is physically real and tangible, and you can touch it. It's not like a movie or a book, which is intangible and something that is more in your imagination, right? Or something that's distinct. You could, if you wanted to, as a spectator, go on stage. Even if you were to be breaking the contract theatrical, because you can do that. Imagine if you get on stage. It's not part of the show. You are watching Romeo and Juliet, and you get up, and you walk on stage, and you disrupt the show. You are basically breaking the unwritten agreement that the audience is supposed to not interfere. But that can happen. You can't do that with a movie. You can't actually enter the movie. The most you could do is, I don't know, take the disc out and throw it across the room, provided it's even on a disc. Because if it's like on a streaming service, you can't do that. So there is this inherent sort of meta angle to all drama, because you could get up on stage. You could break through. Or what about if an actor had an actual freak out? Imagine an actor had, for instance, a panic attack, a real panic attack. They weren't pretending, they're having a real panic attack. Or they have a medical emergency. That has happened. People have died on stage. Not for because they were killed, although some have, but not necessarily because of that, because someone could have a heart attack. Heart attacks don't wait for you to be somewhere comfortable. If you have a heart attack in the middle of a performance and you die, that is the real world intruding on the fiction. The fiction is being broken because it is being intruded upon by reality. So there is an inherent meta aspect to drama that is worth keeping in mind. Now, obviously, it could be not planned. You go up on stage when you're not supposed to, or someone has an emergency, something like that. That can happen. Those are not planned. However, it can also be planned. So here are some cases, some possible considerations in which it can sort of be broken. This supposed contract that we have, that you're supposed to just sit there quietly, and that what's on stage is separate from what's in reality. You can break that by doing certain things. For instance, what if you have one actor who plays many different roles? You, as the audience, can't sit there and be like, oh, that's a completely different person. You'll be like, they're playing a different person, but they're the same person. Or you could have sort of the vice versa of this. What if you have one character, but multiple actors play them? You'll be like, well, this kind of seems to break the rules, doesn't it? It breaks the rules of what it's supposed to be like. Or, of course, stepping out of the role of the character. What if an actor is on stage, doing whatever, and then they turn to us, the audience, and they break character, and they're like, oh, it's absolutely terrible that I'm here in this play right now. You're stepping out of the role, even if that's scripted. Because it's also not necessarily always scripted. I went to a play. It was a rendition of My Fair Lady. It was at Artscape in Cape Town. And the person who, I don't remember the characters' names, it's been a very, very long time, but the main character, the actor fumbled her lines. She just made a mistake. She just accidentally, basically for a second, she forgot what she was supposed to say next. This happens. Human beings make mistakes. It's fine. But the character she was talking to, that actress, she broke her character, turned to the audience, and basically still stayed in character, because she's like a pompous old lady, very old-fashioned type person. So she broke out of what she's supposed to do, but to basically give her colleague time to remember what she's supposed to say next. She essentially turned to us, the audience, broke her role, and was like, "We all make mistakes sometime," and then went back to it, and the play resumed. Essentially, they stepped out of the role of the character to just sort of talk to us, because we know that, yes, mistakes happen. They happen. It's part of what makes a play distinct from a movie. Mistakes can happen. It's the real world. Things can happen, you know. So that's something that can happen. It can be done on purpose, or it can be done a mistake. Like the thing I just explained, my personal example, that was a mistake. No one else will ever have that exact experience except for the people who were in that theater on that day during that particular performance. So it was only however many of us were there. It is a big theater, so quite a few people. But basically, that is a thing that can be done. You can step out of the role of the character. So now the actor is talking to the audience rather than it being the other way around. You could also insert someone who is non-standard as a character. All sorts of things. You could grab someone from the audience and say, "You're now a character." Or you could randomly say that something that is not usually seen as a character, like something that isn't even an actor. Like imagine, I don't know, you could turn a chair into a character and people could be talking to it. And now we will be like, well, they're talking to a chair now, and this person doesn't have psychosis, so we're just supposed to believe that the chair is a person. And that's what happens. That's how it goes. Right? So you can insert something non-standard, which basically breaks the rule again. Or, of course, what if an actor or a character basically becomes a spectator? They walk off stage and they're like, "I'm going to be watching now." But they're still playing themselves, but they basically they've changed their role. When in the standard sort of contract that we mentally sign, the actor isn't supposed to be able to become a spectator. They're not supposed to be able to do that. They're supposed to stay within their role. So the fact that you can break that role is something very interesting. Something worth keeping in mind. Something worth discussing. Something very interesting. Now, another thing you could do is a direct address. You basically talk directly to the audience. I've sort of already said that, where you could, just directly talk to the audience. Like I've seen things like that where I saw a rendition of The Producers where the characters directly spoke to us, because it's a comedy play, it's a musical, and they basically directly spoke to the audience. That happened. Or you could have actors that occupy the incorrect space. Imagine actors that get off stage and start walking around the auditorium, basically walking around with the spectators in the audience. That also breaks the rules. Like the standard rules. They're not supposed to be able to do that. They're not supposed to. Basically, the audience space doesn't exist. The stage is the fictional place. So the fact that they can leave and join us, the people watching, means that they've broken through the fourth wall. They have broken through the idea that there is a specific place they're allowed to be somewhere else. Or, of course, imagine if you grab a spectator and put them on stage. Like, they're not an actor, they are just a random person from the public who has now been put onto the stage. They've basically been made part of the performance. You could do that for many reasons. What if you had, in a story, you had like a trial scene? So you run into the audience and you grab people and you put them onto the stage. They don't have to act, they just have to sit there quietly. They've now become part of the performance. So the idea of what is character, what is actor, what is spectator have broken apart because you can sort of mess with them. So these are the many ways you can sort of look at dramatic character, actor, and spectator. Obviously, we know the basic sort of definitions, right? The character is fictional, the actor is a person on stage, and a spectator is watching. But you could break these things up. Like, what if the actor speaks as themselves? What if we bring a spectator on stage? What if we make a spectator speak? What if we make them act? Are they now an actor, or are they something else? So it becomes something very interesting to look at. And if you are doing an analysis of any description in this sort of sense, there are a bunch of things you could talk about, and these are some of the things. So, yeah, hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully it was educational, helpful, whatever other words happen to exist within your mind. Anyway, If you appreciated this and you like the kind of stuff that I make, the kind of work that I produce and all that jazz, you can support me by checking out my books or my Patreon. I know, very, very fun, but if you don't want to do those things, that's also fine. You can also like, comment, subscribe, do those kind of things, whatever you want, and if you don't want to, you don't have to. It's your choice. You are the spectator here. You get to just leave. So, yeah. Otherwise, have a great day, week, and month ahead, and goodbye.